Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential, your weekly royal talk show brought to you from the Mail's Kensington HQ. I'm Jo Elvin, and as you know, the Platinum Jubilee celebrations have provided an extraordinary few days for royal watchers, and here to discuss all those stories and more is royal correspondent Victoria Murphy and Daily Mail diary editor Richard Eden. Vic and Dick, welcome to you both. Great to have you here. I'm going to start with you, Victoria. In the build-up, there was lots of discussion in the build-up to the Jubilee about how all these internal family dramas would play out. Would they overshadow the celebrations? And actually, they largely managed to avoid all of that.
They really did. And I think the people who organised the Jubilee, the royal family, I think will be feeling very happy this week because actually it was a big success. There was a lot of questions coming into last week around whether the Queen would be able to attend, controversy over Prince Andrew, Harry and Meghan, and whether that narrative would dominate. But actually, in the end, all of those things went as best they could. The Queen made the key appearances that were very important to be front and centre. The Andrew controversy was dealt with, and Harry and Meghan, I do think even their harshest critics would find it hard to sort of point to anything that they did to shift the narrative away from the Queen. The focus was very much on the Queen, and that's clearly what everyone wanted.
Victoria's saying the Andrew situation, it was so unfortunate, this bout of COVID, wasn't it? I know you were worried about how he would fit into proceedings, but then the disease struck.
Yes, I mean, it was a very convenient illness. I'm not saying that anyone asked him to be ill or catch COVID.
I'm sorry. Are you being cynical about this COVID diagnosis?
I don't know. Look, hopefully get well soon, Andrew.
Yeah.
But it did come at a very convenient time, and that's good. That's good because as long as he's not unwell, it meant that he didn't cause any trouble, or we didn't have the awful spectacle of him trying to walk with his mother or anything like that. And it was it meant that everything went well without him.
I think that the Prince Philip Thanksgiving service was a bit of a wake-up call for them, a real realisation that no matter what the event, if Andrew appears, even as a family member, that narrative will completely shift. And I think we came into this Jubilee with them knowing that he had to be out of the picture in order to guarantee that there wouldn't be any controversy. So we knew he wasn't going to be on the balcony. Yes, the COVID diagnosis came into play, but interestingly, before that, they had already told us ahead of Trooping the Colour that he wasn't going to be watching in any capacity. He wasn't going to be at Horse Guards with the rest of the family in the Major General's office. And that was before the COVID diagnosis came into play. So I think an admission there that they see that they couldn't have him publicly at this Jubilee. And what's so interesting about that as well is, if you look at the last time we had a full-scale Trooping the Colour, 2019, before he did his Newsnight interview, he was on horseback as a royal colonel. I mean, a totally different situation this time.
Richard, I hear you have been inundated with theories about a particular seating plan.
Well, everybody's been intrigued by the seating plan at St Paul's Cathedral. It was genuinely fascinating because even though the royal family were very keen to make sure that Harry and Meghan were mentioned in the court circular, that's the first time for a couple of years, and directly after the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, so they kept with the order of precedence. Well, that went out of the window in the service. What we saw in the service was they were relegated to the second row. So even though he's the brother of the future Queen, he had to sit behind the Queen's cousins who come far down the line of precedence, behind the Duke of Kent and the Duke of Gloucester, and there they were tucked away. But what's particularly intriguing is Harry and Meghan arrived separately. They didn't arrive in the minibus with the minor royals. They had a car, so maybe that's something that was generously given to them, organised, by the Queen. But it meant that they arrived separately, so they had a sort of grand entrance. But when they got there, it was all the seats were sort of taken, so they couldn't be seated at the end of the row. People had to get up. It was like when you arrive late at the cinema or something, and people have to get their popcorn and stand up.
And do you think there's meaning in that, or do you think that's just, do you think that they would have had assigned seats or just been told you're on that row?
From what I've told, there really was. So why it was, so there's Beatrice and Eugenie didn't move. They didn't sort of move down the row to let them in. They stuck to their seats. And that's because when they left, there was a procession to leave the cathedral, and it meant that Harry and Meghan were far behind. They had to wait for everyone else in their row to leave first. So they couldn't be photographed. They weren't in the same shots as Prince Charles or the Cambridges. They were nowhere near them, and that was very much deliberate.
And you think that was orchestrated?
Yeah, I think the seating, I'm sure, was decided in advance, and I think it's hard not to look at it as a sign, if not a symbol of the distance between the brothers, that physical distance between them in that seating plan, and the fact that it also meant that there was no picture that could be taken that showed them all in the same frame, that showed the Sussexes directly behind the Cambridges and Charles and Camilla. You haven't, this whole weekend, we haven't had a photograph of William and Harry in the same picture, apart from those wide shots of the cathedral.
Do you think, this might be a really unfair question, but do you think that's a case of either of the brothers saying, fine, I'm coming, but make sure I'm not photographed anywhere near them? Or do you think it's a case of the palace institution saying, do you know what, let's just not even let's make sure that's not a media construct? Which one is it?
I suspect it was a combination of the two, but certainly we saw that William and Catherine had nothing to do with them at all while they were here.
Yeah.
Now that's a big thing. I mean, in the lead up to this, the weeks before, we've had loads of stories appearing about how Harry and William are starting actually to sort of mend fences a bit, and they've been in touch. I didn't see any of that, no. And one thing I ought to add, which was a bit naughty, but I did note on Twitter that directly behind Harry and Meghan was seated the former head of the security service. He's the former MI5 boss, Andrew Parker, Lord Parker. So he was keeping a beady eye on Harry and Meghan from behind.
Not there to protect them. There to protect everybody else.
Yes, maybe to protect them, to give them that security that they asked for.
Yeah, I mean, I think given the fact that you had sort of this weekend as an opportunity for the family to kind of show unity and for everyone to show togetherness, I think it is quite telling that clearly William and Harry did not consciously at any point make an effort to be seen side by side, to be seen in the same frame.
Victoria, do you think there is any hope of a reunion between these warring brothers?
Between the brothers, it certainly doesn't seem like it's happened so far. It feels from everything that we've seen and everything that we've heard that there is still significant distance between them, publicly as we've seen, but also privately. I just think we'll have to see. There was a lot of damage done, I think, over the last couple of years, 2 to 3 years, and I think that's going to take a lot of time. The idea that there would just be a weekend where everything would just be resolved, I think, was always completely naive.
It almost feels, doesn't it, like one of those situations where something actually tragic's got to happen before.
Oh, don't
there's
say
some
that.
perspective,
No, yeah, no, don't say that. But I mean, there's already sort of the spin has started from, Montecito. We've heard stories about how, Harry and Meghan invited the Cambridges to come to their first birthday party for Lilibet. Well, I mean, they would have known that they weren't in Windsor, or in London, that they had been sent to Wales as part of the celebrations. That was known. So you can't just say, oh, they turned down an invitation. That's ridiculous.
It feels a bit tokenistic. But Victoria, Lilibet met Lilibet. What do we know about that first meeting between great-granddaughter and...
Well, she did, we believe. I would love to be able to tell you that we know lots of stuff about it, but, both sides have been very tight-lipped about this. The royal household all weekend were saying, we're not talking about private matters. And you can understand, certainly across the weekend, because clearly there was a desire to keep the focus on the celebrations, all these amazing events that have been organised, and having the Queen publicly, that was what people wanted us to focus on. But still, subsequently, no one confirming that meeting from either side. And the Sussexes did put out some information via a spokesperson about the party that was had on Saturday.
And a photograph.
And a photograph, exactly. And there was details like who made the cake and, telling us about the where it was held and all of that, but no information at all from them still on any meeting with the Queen. Now, of course it happened. We can presume it happened. It would have been ridiculous if it hadn't happened, but there is not anyone in either of those camps giving clear details about those meetings.
I mean, what a contrast. Remember, after the birth of Archie, we had that beautiful photograph of the Queen and Prince Philip meeting their great-grandson Archie with Meghan's mother as well there in Windsor Castle. lovely photograph, and it shows you how much things have changed, because now they're no longer sort of official part of the family. Why should they have an official photograph? Remember that even if they didn't release it, possibly it might crop up in some future fly-on-the-wall documentary. You know, this photo on top of the mantelpiece might be there.
But Richard, the Sussexes have also faced criticism, inevitably, for their use of flying, their use of private jets.
Well, you might remember on this programme not so long ago, we looked at that video that Harry had recorded in for New Zealand, where it had all been for Travelist. Yeah. And it was all about sort of monitoring your stay and whether it's environmentally friendly and that sort of thing. And here we have, they're flying to and from California in a private jet, which apparently is the equivalent of 10 times the carbon that you would use if you just took seats on a on a standard flight. And then he's not only preaching about the environment, but also having a company sort of devoted to trying to make people be more eco-conscious about their travel. I don't quite understand it. I can understand it's convenient, but surely you'd want to sort of show that you were thinking about these things.
What do you think, Victoria? I mean, this kind of criticism in this day and age is not going to go away, is it?
No, exactly. They're not going to escape the allegations of hypocrisy, particularly if they choose to continue to make the environment and these issues front and centre in their public work. I think that they will, because that's something that they were very keen to talk about when they were working royals. But we haven't yet, I think, got a really clear picture of what they're going to be publicly doing, what areas they're going to be focusing on. But certainly they may not be working royals, but they're still public figures, and so they're not going to escape those allegations.
It's fascinating, but I'm sure we'll be talking about it more. But for right now, we're going to return to the Jubilee, and one man who had a ringside view for all the Jubilee action was the Daily Mail's columnist Robert Hardman. Here he is to give us his thoughts.
I think the Jubilee was a triumph. I mean, clearly there were things that could have gone wrong on any number of fronts. I mean, the crowd numbers, I know, were a source of great concern. You know, had they got that right, what we didn't see on our TV screens was the extraordinary volume of people who couldn't get into the Mall. I mean, Trafalgar Square absolutely rammed. I mean, there were far more people wanting to be part of that Jubilee than could be. And actually, that in the end, it was okay. I mean, it's obviously disappointing for those who couldn't get there, but that was a nice problem to have. Previous Jubilees, everyone was sort of worried that no one would turn up. This one, the problem was, I don't think we can fit any more. Also, obviously, there were family issues. It was certainly convenient that the Duke of York suddenly absented himself, saying that he had COVID just before it all started. So there wasn't the distraction of his appearance. The Sussexes actually kept a pretty low profile. They turned up at the things they said they would turn up at and not at other things. And I think that will have gone a long way towards normalising, if you like, their return to these shores. And I think in a couple of years it won't even be newsworthy if they just pop back for something. So all in all, I think the Queen can look back on an extraordinary outpouring of affection for her and for what the monarchy stands for. So all in all, it could not have gone any better. Her Paddington video was classic Queen judgment. Glorious, because you literally had everyone, and I was in the crowd there outside the palace. But you look on Twitter, you look on the world media to the reaction. Everybody from even sort of grudging Republicans had to say, well, that was pretty cool. She can do it. She can absolutely carry off these situations, partly because we all know she's the real deal. She's utterly authentic, and partly because she is the most respected and revered head of state in the world. At the end of the Jubilee, I did say to someone at the palace, can you tell me what's next on the colour chart after Platinum? We've had Diamond and now we've had Platinum, and they said, we don't know. But I mean, before even that, we've got to start thinking about her 100th birthday. I remember her mother's 100th birthday very well, and that's going to be a great one. And we will, of course, have to have that debate. Can the Queen send a card to herself?
That was Robert Hardman there. Robert's biography of Her Majesty, Queen of Our Times, The Life of Elizabeth II is out now. Now, Robert mentioned the video of Paddington and the Queen, and it would be remiss of us not to show you a love this sort of thing, but when she does, we all love it, don't we? She just gets it right.
It was such a great moment, and I was watching from the Mall and seeing the audience reaction at the concert to that, and there was this sort of pause. I think people were kind of trying to work out what they were seeing, and they weren't really quite sure what was going on. And then when she pulled the sandwich out of her handbag, I mean, the audience loved it. And I think, again, we're sort of reminded that despite her struggles that she's had recently with her health and her advancing years, she still has this ability to sort of understand what the public want and tap into that and show us that humorous side and still surprise us, even at 96, after so many years. That was a huge surprise to everyone who was there.
Well, I thought tapping the teacup to the beats of "We Will Rock You," to start was a lovely touch. So whoever came up with that idea, well done.
It's fascinating, isn't it? But Richard, with the Queen being only present for sort of some parts of the occasion, it slightly, sadly, does feel like another sort of transitional occasion, doesn't it?
It felt like that was almost deliberate to me, that she'd sort of almost decided that she would only attend some. And so it was a chance to really sort of hand over. We saw that so much with the speeches that William and then Charles gave at the concert on Saturday night, and then also with the balcony appearances. It seemed to be a very conscious handing over to Charles, a very public chance to do that. And I thought it was really effective. I mean, there's been some criticism since, people saying, oh, it shows how everything's dominated by the Queen, and the royal family will struggle after her reign. But I think it showed the real opposite to that.
And Victoria, do you think that the public enjoyed seeing a bit more of the younger princes and princesses? Because we saw a lot of them over the weekend, didn't we?
We saw a lot of the children, and I think there was expectation that they would be involved in some capacity, but I think not perhaps to the extent that they were. Obviously, the Cambridge children in carriages at Trooping the Colour for the first time, and then seeing the kids go on engagements with their parents, and then for a long period of time over that pageant, being able to see them in the public eye and see so many of the family interactions, and nice to see the cousins as well. I think what was nice about the weekend was that you had the elements that you expected to have, and we knew the Queen was going to be the centre of attention, and there was going to be a lot of enjoyment of seeing her, but there was lots of kind of quite unexpected fun things that happened on the side of that as well. And the kids was definitely one of them, and also Mike Tyndall and his hats and his social media posting of Zara and things like that kind of came through. And I think it was just added to this reminder that this was meant to be a fun event, and it was meant to be a family event as well.
I thought the interaction of the Cambridge's children was even more entertaining than something on stage a lot of time.
Do you think that George, Charlotte and Louis enjoyed the proceedings as much as other people did?
I hope so. It was very brave to take a 4-year-old, in Louis' case, to a pop concert, really. So that's always a big thing. And some people sort of saying that, he's badly behaved for it. It was ridiculous, any 4-year-old at a pop concert. But they were very good. And we saw some very touching moments where sort of Charlotte was telling George to put his hands by his side when it was the national anthem. And
I enjoyed her shaking her fist at Louis. That to me spoke. I wanted to know a lot more about what goes on behind closed doors there.
Look this one up. There was a very funny moment where George puts his head in his hands, where Prince Louis is kind of standing up and cheering at some completely wrong moment. But it was good fun, and that's what it made it really feel like a family affair. And we didn't just see those children, actually. We saw Princess Eugenie's son, August, for the first time. We've only ever seen sort of back images of him. And also Princess Beatrice's stepson, Wolfie, he's known as, and we saw him for the first time. So it was all very great family occasion.
Do you think this heralds, Victoria, a time where we'll see more of the Cambridge children, or is this like a real one-off?
I think this was a real one-off, and I think the fact that we saw so much of them really emphasised the fact that this was a unique event. It was a unique historic moment. It was a real kind of family event. But generally, the Cambridge's policy with their kids is completely behind closed doors, off limits. They're very keen for them to have a childhood where they can just not have to worry about the spotlight. And I think that's absolutely going to continue to be the case moving forward. Another thing I think is interesting about the royals themselves is that we've seen They were very visible over the Jubilee celebrations there every day. But then this week, we've seen them all get straight back into their regular day-to-day engagements. And some people might have thought, oh, maybe if they were visible across the weekend, they would sort of take a break. But actually, I think that was a deliberate attempt to remind us all that that was fun, and now they're back to work and they want to be visible in the day-to-day, going out into communities, continuing to work.
I do hope that the Queen is just sort of like languishing in a bath somewhere, talking to the corgis.
No, I don't think so. She's had engagements this week. I saw she was meeting various people. She was having Privy Council meeting. No, it is, amazing for a 96-year-old.
But how does she keep going? But also, already people, God help her, people are talking about a 75th.
75th. I have to admit, I had to look this up to see which it will be a diamond Jubilee again.
Another diamond.
Another diamond, yes. But, the Queen Mother lived to 101. Our Queen's 96. So it's certainly not beyond the realms of possibility. And it would be another great occasion, I'm sure.
Wow. And we'll be covering it in 5 years' time. Trust me. That's all we have time for on Palace Confidential this week. Huge thanks to Victoria Murphy, Richard Eden, Robert Hardman, and to you, of course, for watching. We'll leave you with some of our favourite images of the Platinum Jubilee. Enjoy those, and we will see you next week.